This presentation is sponsored by the Nicholas County Historical and Genealogical Society. This month's presentation is by our guest speaker, Ken Summers. His presentation is about the Martin No. 5 bomber that crashed in Nicholas County on September 3, 1921. Was the bomber used in the mine wars occurring at the time?
Okay, my name is Kenneth Summers. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a past president of the Nicholas County Historical and Genealogical Society, along with my mother, who she was one also. I was born in Ridgewood and raised basically by my grandparents down around Lockwood and Drenham back in the early 50s. And sometime during my childhood, I heard quite a bit of talk about, have you ever heard about the airplane that crashed here in Nicholas County? And of course I knew absolutely nothing about that. And heard a little bit from my ancestors and realized they would say, well, you know, everybody went when the plane crashed and inspected the site, and a lot of people, local folks, would get a piece of the airplane and bring it home. And they were afraid actually to have this stuff because the military told the locals that don't take any of this, you know, it's government property. So they pretty much tried to do that and keep it secret when they would get something, but about everybody in the lower or southern end of Nicholas County had a piece of the tarp or whatever it is, the rag that's off of the plane, or some little scrap of something, you know, that they could say came from there. So I guess we're about ready to start the talk here now, Rob. I'm going to tell you about what I've learned in my adult life about the Martin bomber crashing. That's my objective, is let you know what I know that I've discovered about this. And that's a picture of Martin bomber, well, one of the Martin bombers. Just so happens number 5 is the one that crashed here in Nicholas County. It crashed in the second hollow down from the head of the Sugar Camp branch of 20 Mile on September the 3rd, 1921. It was here. It had been sent here by the president to quell the mine wars in southern West Virginia. I'm sure everyone's heard about the Blair Mountain mine wars and all that, but most people don't realize that one of the airplanes that went here to quell the mine war actually crashed up here in Nicholas County. This is a picture of one of the Martin bombers, well, 2 of them. That's one, and this is another with the number 5 on it here. Number 5 is the one that crashed. And this picture was taken on the recently established in 1921 airfield in what is now Kanawha City. Right now there are houses all up and down that big field there, but it was a farmer's field at the time, and the military used it for an airfield. You can see two propellers on that machine there. There were two engines on it. They were V12 Liberty engines, that's the name of them. And they were 420 horsepower each engine. Each of those big planes were equipped with 5 Lewis machine guns, 7.62 millimeter machine gun. There were 2 in the cockpit, 2 in the rear cockpit, and 1 underneath. Yeah. These machines had the capacity to carry 1,800 pounds of internal munitions, and then they could carry 2,000 pounds of external ammunition. The wingspan on this machine is 75 feet. It's kind of it's bigger than you think, you know. It's 43 feet long. It had a speed of 99 miles per hour and a range of 404 miles. It was constructed out of canvas and wood only. Well, there was a little bit of metal around these tubes and struts and whatnot, but mostly it was just canvas and wood. That's in the airfield in August of 1921. These headlines I acquired by studying the old newspapers from the time. Like you were talking about, it's easier to study. Well, I didn't actually have it. I had microfiche, and it about drove me crazy because, you know, I feel like I was still moving when I get that thing to stop and then try to read what it said and all. But you can read the headlines here. This is from the Charleston Gazette, August the 23rd, 1921. Miners were gathering at Barnett, and the group had swelled to 2,000, they say. And the chief of police, they were worried that the miners, instead of taking off and going to the minefield, they were afraid they were going to come to Charleston in their argument with the government. But they didn't. Somebody talked to them, they said, no, we're not going to do that, so that helped them out. The mine wars had been brewing for about 20 years down here in southern West Virginia. The UMW had been trying for those number of years to unionize the southern part of West Virginia, and the coal miner owners, they didn't want to have anything to do with unions. The miners actually their families were evicted by the mine owners from the property that they were living on, and they had a tent city built at Barnett. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Mother Jones, but there was a woman, she was a UMW organizer, or any kind of union actually. I think she started off unionizing some seamstresses up in New York or somewhere. She had quite a name and quite a vocabulary, I've heard. It's interesting to read about her. She was supposed to go to the tent city and talk. I think it's described somewhere in the body of this article right here that she was going to go that very day, August the 23rd, and talk to the people in the tent city. This one is titled August the 25th of 1921, Miners on the March to Mingo. and leave Logan now in a state of siege. This, by the way, was the largest insurrection against our government, or anywhere in the United States since the Civil War. I mean, it was a big deal. Now the miners gathered up and at the tent city, which is right there at Marmet, and marched on their way to, they were on their way to Logan. But anyway, when they got to Blair Mountain, they were met by a bunch of the local folks and the police people from Logan, and they clashed right there on Blair Mountain. That's why you hear so much about Blair Mountain. They commandeered a train also, and they just took the train. Armed men, you know, hundreds of them, just approached the train and took it over, and they worked their way toward Logan. There was an aviator, this is August 26th, and there was in the body of this article here, it tells that a guy by the name of Bob Shank was employed to, this was a private aviator I'm talking about now. He was employed to take his aircraft and fly over the mountains on the way to Logan and report back to whoever it was that employed him. It doesn't say in the article who employed the guy. No doubt it was the miners or the Baldwin Phelps Detective Agency, one or the other. But he was to survey all the roads and passes and report that back to whoever employed him. And he was flying out of Huntington. So there's nothing much in the paper about him. And this also says Army airplanes from Washington arrived. This is what that day did I say it was? August the 26th. It says that they came here, and I think this one says it took them like 4 hours, wasn't it, Rocky? There's another place where it tells, when Mitchell himself came, he did it a lot faster.
Yeah, that one says 5 hours.
Okay. You can read it from there?
Yep.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. This is a pretty self-explanatory. That is a machine gun of the day, probably a 1919 Browning, I suspect. But those guys, these are miners on Blair Mountain, waiting to confront the people from Logan. This is August the 27th of 1921. Billy Mitchell arrived. This is commander of the airmen, reaches the Capitol. He got there in 2 hours and 50 minutes from Langley Field in Virginia. And he brought 3 Martin Bomber number 2s, which are actually designated NBS number 1, which stands for Night Bomber Short Range. They got 2 designations, MB2 and the NBS 1. He was there to look over the situation with the miners protesting. And what they were protesting against was the martial law that was being enforced by the local law enforcement. And they didn't like it a bit. Armed deputies from Logan County were against the miners. There was a trainload of armored men came, these were the miners themselves now, they came from Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. They arrived in South Charleston. It's down in the body of this article right here where that was talked about. Okay, this is more men in a machine gun nest on Blair Mountain, awaiting the approach of the enemy. This President Harding was he was the guy that sent these ships, the fleet, to West Virginia. And in the body of this article here, it tells that right here, I might have your way, aviators will drop bombs on miners. See where it says that right there? Aviators did drop mines in the tent city, but they were privately owned and operated. They weren't from the military. The military, as far as I know, never did drop a bomb on anyone. But there were some private planes deployed, and that's what was done. They made homemade pipe bombs, and luckily, when they dropped them in the tent city, they landed in the field, not close to a tent or whatever. So I don't think anyone was ever injured by them, but the intention was there. And I mean, people's nerves were fraught, no doubt. This is the Secretary of War made the order to send 13 Army planes to the war zone, and basically they were supposed to monitor what was going on and be ready to take action if necessary. And in the body of this article, it tells that the reason for that was that hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property had been done by dynamiting and burning. So that was the lead up to the war. This is Billy Mitchell here. I guess I lost my battery. Yeah, there he is, right there. And this is a picture of the camp in Kanawha City, and there's a row of airplanes parked right here. The 3 Martin bombers are in that bunch, and then there's some smaller airplanes, a bunch of smaller airplanes, and they were for reconnaissance also. And then there's a bunch of tents here with armed personnel, Army personnel, camped there in that field. And this is the Kanawha River, and maybe the 35th Street Bridge. I'm not real clear on the exact location, but I know that's where Kanawha City is now. This is a view of the same field from the opposite side of the river. And the first photo I showed you of the planes, that's where it came from the corner of this picture. But if you look, you'll see one of the large biplanes right here on this end, what's right in where we're looking at it. And the other two are there somewhere in that. They did have a hangar where they stored one of them the first night it arrived. The news people went to the field up there while the planes were there, and Billy Mitchell was there. And they asked Billy, he says, how do you plan to quell the miners? What's your plan for them? He said, I'm going to fly low over them and gas them. They actually had a train with, a wagon with tear gas that they hauled into here, and he put on a demonstration by asking for volunteers out of the bunch of tents that you saw there to be gassed with tear gas. It was a new thing at the time. So some of them volunteered and wore gas masks, and some of them volunteered and didn't wear a gas mask. So when they put the gas off, the guys that didn't have a mask on, they skedaddled out of there because it was bad. I've never been gassed, but yeah, that was his plan. The UMW was tried to stop the miners, but they were unsuccessful. They claimed that they tried to stop 3,000 armed miners from invading southern West Virginia, but they couldn't. They couldn't control the group. This is September the 1st. Fighting ceases in Logan after 11 persons are killed. Armed men give no evidence of disbanding, reports show. Martial law in 5 counties today believed to be certain. Okay, so this was a very tense situation on September the 1st in southern West Virginia. The Army sent about 1,000 or over that number of men and supplies, and when the miners actually confronted the U.S. Army, they decided that they didn't really want to fight the government. Now they were fighting basically the local control of what do you call it? Martial law. They did not want martial law imposed on them by the mine operators and the government of West Virginia. That's what they were really fighting against. And I think they were wanting a higher power to take over. So they just disbanded and decided to surrender their arms. Here they are, giving up their arms. Can everybody see the stack of weapons? It's pretty impressive. If you look over here on this side, there's a stack of ammo over there that looks to me like it's 8 feet tall. Boxes of ammo. And then you can see hundreds, if not thousands, of guns scattered out between there and this machine gun over here. And a cannon right there. So they were loaded for bear. I mean, they were ready to fight. The 3 Martin bombers that were here were sent back to Langley, Virginia, and on the way back, one of them crashed on the mountain in Nicholas County. And it has, the number of that bomber was Martin Bomber number 5.
Did it in fact go in a blaze there? That article says it was plunges to earth ablaze in the Nicholas Hills.
I don't know how that rumor got started, but I have a copy of the after action report or the accident report direct from the military, and it says plainly in there was no fire. All the gasoline did leak out of both tanks. There were 2 tanks on the machine, and all of it leaked out, but there was no fire. This is September the 5th. It says right here. The Army and the locals were hunting for the downed plane. And where is Glen Falls? Does anybody know? I know. Nope. About every story I've ever known anything about, when the news people get there, if they're not from there, they're lost. So Glen Ferris is what they're trying to say, but they didn't know where they were. And somebody made the accident of reporting that the crash happened somewhere near Poe, so that was published also. I don't know, they couldn't find Drennan, and the actual crash site is closest to Drennan. If there's a town anywhere that's closer, but I don't know anything about it. All right, now here is where my uncle Carl Dorsey in 2007, I think it was, he marked a map for me and said that right there is where that plane crashed. It's in the second hollow down from the head of Sugar Camp Branch of 20 Mile. The way we always access, can everybody read a topographic map? Mm-hmm. Anyway, you were mentioning a pond on top of the mountain? Right. Somebody was. I was. Yeah, you. Right there is the pond on top of the mountain, I assume. Downhill is this way, that way. There's a ridge that runs out right there, and then from there, these are equal elevation rise. And the top of the mountain is missing. The way we always got to this area was to go up Jerry's Fork Road. I'm tracing it right here now. We get to where the road turns and starts down the mountain, park, and then we would walk on top of the mountain. Let's see, if I can figure out how. I think this is the top of the mountain that's missing right here. But anyway, you can go to the head of the 20 takes a run on the left hand fork, go across this way, and run a ridge that runs out through there, and drop off and be in the second hollow down, or the first hollow down, or the third hollow down, or the fourth hollow. There's several hollows going down that Jerry Sugar Camp Branch.
Now, when you're talking about dropping down, are you dropping down in 20 Mile on the backside there?
Yeah.
You went all the way to the top.
Yeah. Yeah, from here, if you go that direction, you're going down. And the original Sugar Camp Branch comes up this way and heads in right about it, right in there. And this little holler heads right here. Well, it did head right up in here, but it's gone. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you're going in a 20-mile outlet. This is the, there's another hollow here. This is Tate's Run. And this hollow here is what's called the Laurel Fork of Lime Creek. It's confusing, and everybody that's ever been up there gets half lost or whatever. But it's worse now because it's been strip mined, and you just can't orient yourself. But that is the spot right there as far as I'm concerned. I have paperwork that my Uncle Carl Dorsey marked and told me in '07 that this is where it crashed. And he'd been there with Uncle Ray. Uncle Ray is my great uncle, and they hunted together, and I hunted with them. I've been to that site, but not since it was stripped and stuff. And I don't think I found any relics when I was there. Uncle Ray had something that he had found. But anyway, that's it. Okay. The bodies of 3 men from the airplane were found, and this doesn't show it, but down in the body of this write-up in the paper, Mr. White, the undertaker, claimed that he had been the person that found the wreckage. He wasn't the man that found it. Ben Hughes is the guy's name that found it. And he reported it to Mr. White, and White had connection with someone that had access to the military and told them the whole story. But one of the bodies had been thrown 200 feet from the crash site, and apparently they didn't find it until later. No one in Nicholas County had probably ever seen an airplane unless they had been, you know, to a military field or something of that nature. I don't think we had air service. I may be wrong about that, but anyone that knew about the crash and was local went up there to investigate, you know, see what is it, what's going on, and that's what this is a picture of. I suspect that may be my granddad right there. Does anybody recognize that guy? If it's him, it's Clarence Dorsey.
Ken,
Yes, sir.
where did they run the operations from, the search operations from?
Well, it started at my granddad Homer Summers' house. The military, they came and they knew, someone told them that he had a phone. Back then, when you had a phone, you had to be a member of a group that formed their own phone company somehow. And he had a phone, and they met there, and I think it says somewhere that there were like 15 or more people showed up at his house. The military folks were there using it as a headquarters because he had a phone. And one of the Summerses had, well, I guess it was Homer's wife, had 2 boys. Now, they weren't Homer's boys. I don't know whose boys they were. But anyway, they had seen the plane go down, and they pointed to the direction that it was. And it was almost due north, just a little bit to the east of due north from the house. So they sent people up Lime Creek, the right fork of Lime Creek, and some of them up Jerry's Fork, and that's where it was headquartered. But they moved from there up to Drennan. Arthur Mason also had a phone at Drennan, which was closer actually to the crash site. So the secondary information they were using that site to transfer information to Swiss, because Flynn Lumber Company had a sawmill at Swiss, and there was a railroad that came up the Gauley River to Swiss, and that's as far as it went, I think, anyway. They used that. Oh, if anyone has questions, feel free to interrupt. I mean, this is not a formal going here, but this is September the 6th.
Well, he didn't mince words, that headline, didn't he? No. 4 dead, 5th dying.
Well, no mincing of words, but now the guy that was dying actually lived 3 years after that.
I was gonna say, you could have put critical condition or something.
Yeah.
He was in bad shape, paralyzed from the waist down, and the doctor that attended him on his way to Montgomery stopped down at Otter Creek. There's a guy named Sawyer's lived down there, and they stopped there at Otter Creek, and the doctor had them to boil water, sterilize a catheter, and inserted it into this injured man, and very much relieved him.
No doubt.
He needed to wee-wee and he couldn't do it. So that's part of the story. I mean, that's the truth. It's in the after-action report that the military did. Those guys, kept records. They told all of that stuff and signed their names saying this is all the truth and all that kind of thing, you know. I'm impressed with how much information they actually acquired. And I got that stuff from, I think he's a member of this group.
You got it from Junior Tucker.
That's right. That's exactly who I got it from. Is his name Lee also? I think
Baron.
Huh?
Baron.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Barron, that's right.
Okay, that's who I got it from.
Nickname it, yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Only thing is, when they typed that up, they made 4 copies, and back then it was, you ever see an old copy where it's mimeograph or whatever you call it, when they typed?
Right.
It's hard to read. Somebody needs to take that information and retype it and put it out there for the public, or put it in our library or whatever.
Smudgy.
Okay, so these guys were found, and I already told you before who found them. A guy by the name of Ben Hughes. My grandmother's sister's name was Hazel Neal, and then she married Ben Hughes. So it's pretty close family. You know, we got the real story. That's how I got that story anyway. And here, this is telling about the, I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's on.
The tear gas. They brought, this whole story right here, if we could read that, carload of smoky fluid brought here from Edgewood Arsenal, and Army authorities are more or less disappointed in not being able to give it a test, a practical test. They want to use it on the miners, you know, but Mitchell let them use it on some of the airmen up there in the field at Canal City, and it worked. And that's a picture of the troop train. Now, when they mentioned the train coming into St. Albans, I think they meant a real locomotive. I'm not certain. But then this story talks about the train, and this is what it amounts to. Did you know we use wagon trains to haul our troops to battles and such in that time frame? I did. I guess we did. We were using horses and mules in World War I because we ran out of mules and had to go to Mexico after some of it. Okay, these are the names of the people that were there in the wreck. Pilot Harry Speck died. Lieutenant William Fitzpatrick died, Sergeant Arthur Brown died, and Private Walter Howard died. Corporal Alexander Hazelton lived, and I already told you about part of his ordeal. Next. This is a picture taken, the military was quite good about coming in here and hauling a big old camera up there and setting it up and taking pictures of what, you know, they wanted a record and figure out what happened. So that's the Liberty V12 engine, one of them. There were two. And this is one of the tires off of the plane. And those are locals. And then, I don't know, I can't identify most of the scrap there, but next. The original picture of this has a big circle on there that's got the date and all the important information that the military wanted on there. And these are a bunch of men at the crash site. And this particular guy right here with the mustache, that's my great-granddad, Joseph Clark Dorsey. And this guy right here, the taller one right there, that's my granddad, Joseph Clarence Dorsey. And this next fellow right there, that small looking fellow, young looking fellow, that's Uncle Thomas Christmas Dorsey. And they were there at the crash site, which is just a short distance from the family home on Tate's Run, really. It's within 1.25 miles, didn't we figure out, Rock, or 1.5 miles or something. So they can just walk up Tate's Run and take a left, and go up the top of the ridge, and wander around and go around and back over into that, where the crash site was.
Okay, that house that's up Tate's Run, I don't know if it's still there. But,
Yeah, it's still there.
that was their home place right
Yes.
there?
Yes, sure is. It's falling down and it's in a huge airship, you know, there's so many people, but yeah, it's in pretty bad shape, but that's where Joseph Clark Dorsey owned, and, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Rob. And this is another picture of a mixture of men and women at the crash site on about the same day, I'm pretty sure. And anyway, I'm related to two of these folks. This one right here is my grandmother, Anna Mae Levesey Dorsey. She and Clarence weren't an item at the time. She was born in '05, and this crash happened in '21, so what's that make her, 16? And this is her younger sister, Aunt Ethel, with her at the crash site, and I don't know when she was born, but they may have met. My grandma and ma and granddad, that might have been the first time they saw each other, because this woman and her, I guess, they lived in 20 Mile somewhere and went to what was called the Lone Star School. It was on Lone Star Mountain, where there used to be a fire tower. Has anybody heard of Lone Star Mountain? Anybody got a question?
Is that the fire tower that you can go up down there at Gilbo to?
Used to be able to, it's gone.
I know, but
Yeah, that's it, Lone Star. There was a school there, and the Underwood Cemetery is right there close to it. And anyway, you know, that's where it is. This is the correct story right here that tells that Ben Hughes is actually the guy that found the airplane. It's probably on down in the body of this somewhere. Here, this says that the wingspan on those machines was 90 feet. I thought that was true, but I don't think it is. But now I think this is right about them burning 30 gallons an hour of fuel. says they could carry quantity of tear gas, a new chemical which causes coughing, nausea, but leaves no bad effect after a few hours. Machine guns, they had 5 on there. Anyway. This is a picture of past president of this historical society and his dad. That's Wayne Akert and George, his dad. And they made a trip to try to find the wreckage, and I don't think they were successful. But Wayne was able to acquire this piece of the plane for the Historical Society. And we own it. And that picture was made. A guy by the name of Richard Andre used to write for the West Virginia magazine, and he had his dad was a guy that actually left Charleston and went to Nicholas County looking for the wreck back in 1921. And his dad had an Indian motorcycle shop in Charleston, and eventually was able to employ someone to load one of those Liberty V12 engines and haul it out of that mountainous terrain and bring it to his Indian motorcycle shop in Charleston. And he had it there for a number of years. But anyway, Richard Arnott, how you say his last name? Arnaud, he knew a good bit about this. He actually had a hub off of the propeller that they made into an ashtray, and he had one of the wheels off of the plane that they donated to the archives in Charleston. It's been lost somehow, but anyway, while we're talking about that, I want to show you all something. Can everybody see this?
Get that light over there.
Right there. Where would be a good place to let
Here on
you
the
all?
table.
Yeah. If you look at the workmanship on this, you'll be impressed, especially if you've ever done any woodwork. It impresses me. My dad was a shop teacher, and I'm impressed when looking at it. It's got a strut down the middle here, and they've bored holes to lower the weight of that thing from one end to the other. And it's all put together with little brads, but as far as I know, nobody knows where it went on the airplane. Do you? You ever hear anybody say they knew?
No.
I didn't think so. Anyway, Rock and I were intrigued by seeing this, and Wayne Akert had it stored in his business for years. And when I got ready to do this talk, I asked Wayne, could we borrow that long enough to show it in this meeting that we're having? Oh yeah, it belongs to the Historical Society, and we know that. But anyway, he didn't have any idea where it went. Now, Rocky and I both spent hours on the internet trying to search through models of the airplane or whatever we could find to locate where this thing may have gone on this airplane. There it is. And I guess I have to say it was me that actually discovered this picture of an airplane, a Martin Bomber number, 14. And I recognized those little triangle places on that wing. I said, we got a triangle, you know, maybe that's where that thing goes. Well, I tried to call the National Museum of the United States Air Force this morning and did talk to an individual there, but he said, you'll have to contact us during the week and maybe do it through the internet and all that kind of thing. He didn't know anything about it, but here's my theory. Billy Mitchell, they tested the original MB-1s, and he was familiar with what it would do and how it operated and all that. Well, he convinced the Army to go ahead and order some new ones. And when they put the order in, Billy Mitchell had some ideas about what he'd like to see on the next airplane. So he wanted wings that would fold back on the MB-2s that they were going to make. And he got what he wanted. Now this is a picture of an MB-2 with both wings folded back. Now you see this area here, that's the front of the wing where the wing is big and thick. In order to fold that wing back like that, it's my opinion that you had to remove a piece of the wing, either physically remove it or fold it out of the way, whatever. You had to get that piece of the wing out of there so that you could move that wing back. And I think that's what we own right there. I think we own that piece.
And it also has hinges, or the remnant of hinges on it.
Yeah, it has a pair of metal hinges on one side there. I
Over
can't
here.
see them right now.
Yeah,
But
they're on
anyway,
this side.
that thing may have just folded up and laid either back on the, how old are those batteries you put?
No, it's good, Ken. You're too high. You're on the ceiling.
Oh. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. I think it may have folded back on the top of the wing in the flat area, either the one you were folding back or the one that stayed in place. I don't know for sure, but I think that's what went on. And Billy Mitchell may have had anticipated that he wanted to put those planes on an aircraft carrier at some point in time. He may have been trying to come up with an offensive weapon. I'm just surmising, I don't know. This is a picture of the guy that survived the crash up on Sugar Camp Branch before he got crippled up. That's Corporal Alexander Edward Hazelton right there. This is his death certificate. If you ever have any question from anyone about how long he lived or if he died right away and that kind of stuff, this is his death certificate. And right down here it says that he died on September the 12th, 1924. Almost 3 years exactly from the time that he was crippled up. Just a short time after that. And it says that he actually died of tuberculosis generalized, but he was crippled the whole time. Now, we're back to the Martin Bomber on the airfield up in Hall City, and you see that number 5 right there. This is the very airplane that crashed here in Nicholas County that no one knows a thing about. And this is the result of number 5 dropping a bomb in the water beside that Ostfriesland German ship. Billy Mitchell knew not to try to hit the deck of that thing. He actually had this whole crew of bombers practicing way ahead of time to drop bombs and have them hit beside the ship, not on the ship. Because if you want to sink a ship, you don't just hit it on the superstructure. You hit in the water beside it. And the implosion, or whatever it is what causes the damage. And when number 5, they dropped several bombs on that ship, but when number 5 dropped its bomb, it flew around and the ship was turned over and sank. I've not read that story myself, but Richard Andre, who printed that poster we have over in the courthouse, he's read the report, or said he had. I talked to him on the phone before he died, and he said that's what it says in that military report. Number 5 dropped the bomb, final bomb, and that thing rolled over. This is an example of how not to sink a ship. If you want to kill everybody on board, or maim them, or whatever, this is the way to do it. But you don't sink a ship doing that. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, finally a question.
What caused the plane to wreck?
Did I not say it was in a thunderstorm? I didn't, did I?
No?